I want to start out today by thanking all my colleagues who took the opportunity to speak on this issue. One of the reasons I chose to lead this bill was to start the conversation. We have been on extreme opposite ends of this issue for a very long time, and although I know the governor has no interest in signing this bill, should it get to him, we've started a conversation, and I think that's a critical
Representative
point.
from the 61st, address the chair, please.
Of course, Mr. Speaker. So, I've heard a lot of great stories today. I didn't want to get real personal, but one thing that I really have noticed is something that the big divider in the room is one side thinks that an unborn baby is a life, and one side thinks that the life of the mother is more important, and maybe that's not a life inside there unless they want it to be. I was at St. John the Baptist Parish Picnic in Paris Festival right after the Dobbs decision before my primary, and my opponent was also there, a male, and he had a couple of neighbors who came over to talk to me and said, "Oh, Mike's our neighbor, and we wanted to talk to you and get your views. Well, we're probably going to vote for him." And it was a mom and dad and their adult daughter who was an emergency room nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital locally, fairly young. I think she was maybe 25, 26. And, mom and dad were kind of talking about the economy and inflation. And this young lady said, "Well, you're a Republican. Where do you stand on abortion? And why are you running?" And I said, "Well, we got into some subject of like government overreach during the pandemic and medical freedom." And she said, "Well, you Republicans just push, your medical freedom about the vaccine, but, you don't give women medical freedom. There's no medical freedom for women." And I said, "Well, Sarah, I really appreciate everything that you do as an emergency room nurse, and I respect where you're coming from. But the fundamental difference between you and me is that there's a life in there. I support women's health, but I also support the rights of that child that is unborn, and that's the fundamental difference between you and me." And her mom sort of was like, and her dad was like, "Ooh, you just got roasted," but that's because we were at St. John the Baptist Parish, right? So during the public hearing for this bill, I heard a lot of catchphrases, Mr. Speaker, things like reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, reproductive health care, and reproductive justice. This sinister manipulation of language, repeated over and over again, normalizes the termination of life. The word reproduction in biological terms implies that a new life is being created. It implies hope. Yet in all of these phrases, there is no hope. There are absolutely no rights, no freedom, no health care, and certainly no justice for that new life. For example, Vice President Harris's reproductive freedom tour has nothing to do with reproduction at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Nothing is being reproduced. It is a celebration of intentionally ending lives. Where have we gotten to in this country? Mr. Speaker, I also heard phrases like women's rights and government should not come between a woman and her doctor. It's interesting that the party who's trying to erase women and completely undo decades of social and legal victories for women only seem to know what a woman is when it comes to abortion. Never mind a woman's rights to safety and privacy in bathrooms or locker rooms. Never mind her rights to compete on a level playing field with other women. Never mind the woman's rights of a female unborn child. Pregnancy should be voluntary. My body, my choice. More phrases from the hearing, Mr. Speaker. I agree. Pregnancy should be voluntary. That's why I support common sense health education about how a woman becomes pregnant and how to prevent pregnancy. That's why I support increased access to contraception, over-the-counter availability, and extended prescriptions for oral contraceptives. That's why I support the efforts of pregnancy resource centers to connect women with providers and avenues to access to contraception and care after birth. Because I believe pregnancy should be voluntary, I support the exceptions in this bill for medical emergencies and for rape and incest. However, Mr. Speaker, I also believe in personal responsibility. Except for the tragic circumstances for which exceptions have been made in this bill, most women are not forced to get pregnant. The implication in this phrase that restrictions on abortion somehow force someone to become pregnant is, again, a sinister manipulation of language that implies that it is somehow someone else's fault if the choices a woman makes lead to pregnancy. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, unless you have been in a tragic situation outside of your control, if a woman doesn't want to become pregnant, there are choices involved in that. My body, my choice. How does that apply to the baby who has no choice in an abortion? There's body in there. Abortion as readily available birth control relieves people of taking personal responsibilities for their actions and places the blame and the consequences on a baby who had no part in making those choices. Abortion on demand, like the free, no prescription needed emergency contraceptive now available with Badger Care Plus, as of yesterday, thanks to Governor Evers, treats babies and life as if they are disposable. In truth, Mr. Speaker, putting this referendum on the April 2024 ballot is a political threat on all sides. Lobbies and organizations have been using unsettled abortion arguments as fundraising mechanisms for decades. Pro-life groups have intentionally mischaracterized AB 975 because they have some kind of delusion that they can overturn the decision of a Dane County judge at the Wisconsin Supreme Court level. And how long would that take? And even in the committee, they admitted, we don't know how long it could take, and we don't have great confidence. But yet they have reached out to the people on the pro-life side and said, this is a terrible bill because it doesn't honor 1849. 1849 is not in play. If the people have a voice in settling this issue, we might actually be able to focus on some other issues that affect our state. It would force us to talk about everything and not just a singular issue. Now, my friends on the right, that does not mean the fight would be over. It means that we would have a better idea of where and how to examine the cultural conflict of abortion. Why have we lost the value of life? A referendum puts the power back in the hands of the people where it belongs, and it is high time we stop weaponizing the lives of the unborn to leverage political gain. Mr. Speaker, I will do everything I can in my life to give a voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. But I will not participate in using God's precious gift of life to fight my adversaries. We do have a hope problem. And it would be my hope that all people's voices could be heard in a referendum and not just some. We must listen to the hearts of the people. Mr. Speaker, I was clear on Monday, and I'll be clear again today. I do not personally support abortion at any point in pregnancy, but this is not up to me. There is a wide range of views on this, as we've seen today, and certainly as we see in our districts. Why would we be afraid of a referendum? I personally believe that life begins at conception and that an abortion at 1 week or 14 weeks and 20 weeks is just as tragic. But the fact is, whether we like it or not, the current law in Wisconsin does permit abortions up to 20 weeks. They're being performed in Milwaukee, Madison, and Sheboygan right now. 43 states. That's a lot of states out of 50. 43 states prohibit abortions after a point in time in the pregnancy. Most European countries also limit abortion to the first trimester. Allowing abortion well into the second trimester is rare throughout the U.S. and the rest of the civilized world. But we are here to ask the people of Wisconsin if they agree with those 43 states, if they agree with those other normal countries. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, we are a country that has witnessed an unbelievably mournful disintegration of the value of life since 1973, the year my sister was born to my 17-year-old mom, who didn't make that choice.
Representative 61st, we have 1 minute left on debate.
It's time to ask the people if we want to keep going down this path or if we want to take a step in the right direction, a hopeful direction. Late-stage abortions up till birth are extreme, and I believe the people of Wisconsin do not want the extreme. They want their voices to be heard. Ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Don't you want the truth? Maybe you can't handle the truth. Mr. Speaker, like we heard from our colleagues across the aisle yesterday, the will of the people is the law of the land. It is about time we heard from the people what their will on abortion is. Put the question on the ballot. A vote against AB 975 is a vote against the will of the people.